There are rules everyone's taught, and then there are the rules Machiavelli would never say out loud. The ones that separate power from weakness, dominance from exposure. Most people think power is something you show, but Machiavelli knew the truth. Real power is in what you withhold, especially in public. Because in public, you're being watched not just by people, but by opportunity, by reputation, and by those waiting for you to slip. You don't rise by being impressive in public. You rise by being impeccable. And there are 9 behaviors, subtle, emotional, deeply human, that will quietly destroy your presence, your mystique, your control, if you dare reveal them. First rule, never complain in public. You might think it makes you relatable, but in the eyes of the powerful, it does the opposite. Machiavelli understood. When you complain in public, you signal 2 fatal weaknesses. You don't have control and you expect sympathy. Both are poison. Power attracts those who can endure pain without broadcasting it. The moment you share frustration publicly, you create a new identity, not a threat, not a mystery, but a person in need. And the world treats you accordingly. Stay silent. Endure privately. Let them wonder how you never flinch. Second, never reveal insecurity. In private with someone you trust maybe, but never in public. Because what you admit, people start to believe, even if it isn't true. Say I'm not good at this enough times, and soon no one will trust you to be. Say I struggle with confidence, and people will lower their expectations permanently. Machiavelli knew appearances shape truth, and nothing kills authority faster than volunteering weakness. Even when unsure, hold your frame. Let your uncertainty be invisible behind perfect posture. What unnerves them isn't what you say, it's what you refuse to reveal. Third, never boast about your plans. You've seen it, people talking loudly about their next big thing. Machiavelli would smile at them, and then use their ambition against them. When you speak your plans in public, 2 things happen. People feel no urgency to support you. You're already doing well, right? And others now have a map to sabotage you before you even start. Announce nothing. Let your success arrive as a surprise. Move quietly until results are undeniable. When asked, shrug, smile, offer nothing because power is best accumulated when no one sees it coming. Fourth, never take public sides in petty conflicts. In private, loyalty may make sense. In public, it makes you predictable. Machiavelli warned rulers, never get involved in others' quarrels unless you stand to gain. Jump into a dispute and you gain an enemy without necessity. You form alliances based on emotion, not strategy, and you reveal values before you have the power to enforce them. Let others expose themselves. Let them fight. You observe. You remember. You position. Public neutrality isn't cowardice, it's preserving future dominance. Fifth, never overshare your emotions. Modern culture tells you to be authentic and share your truth. Machiavelli would laugh and then watch you lose influence. Public emotion is leverage you hand to others for free. Anger tells them how to provoke you. Sadness tells them when you're weak. Overexcitement tells them what to dangle in front of you. Every emotional reveal becomes a button they can press at will. This doesn't mean you act cold. It means you control when, where, and with whom you open the gates. In public, emotions should be measured, deliberate, and often strategic. Let them feel something from your presence, not your outbursts. Sixth, never justify yourself unnecessarily. The urge to explain is the urge to seek approval. Machiavelli understood that explanations given without demand are admissions that you feel pressure that you want them to agree. In public, when accused or questioned, answer briefly and only if needed. The more you explain, the more you dilute your authority. Let them sit with the mystery. Let them wonder why you didn't defend yourself. A mind left unanswered will work harder to fill the silence than any words could. Seventh, never advertise your envy. Everyone feels it. Few admit it. The moment you show envy, you tell the world exactly where you think you stand below. Machiavelli would turn this into a weapon, letting others envy him while giving them nothing in return. If you see something you want, you don't telegraph desire. You study it quietly. You take notes, build leverage, and then acquire it without warning. Envy exposed is weakness. Envy concealed is fuel. Eighth, never compete where the audience decides the winner. In games of public opinion, debates, contests of popularity, you place your fate in the crowd's hands. Machiavelli knew crowds are fickle, easily swayed by drama, novelty, or sentiment. Compete only in arenas where results are objective, undeniable, and visible to all. When the scoreboard is facts, skill, or measurable impact, there's no need to convince anyone, you simply win. And until you can win, you wait. Ninth, never expose your desperation. Desperation repels support and attracts predators. Whether it's for attention, opportunity, or validation, the scent of need is blood in the water. Machiavelli's strategy was patience disguised as indifference. You might want it badly, but you never let them see it. You make your presence optional, your approval scarce, and your time valuable. The world chases what it can't easily have. These 9 rules are not about deception, they're about discipline. The world rewards those who can control themselves in public because control is rare. And in the rare moments when you do break one of these rules, it should never be by accident. It should be a deliberate move calculated for effect. Machiavelli's genius wasn't in creating rules for the sake of control. It was in understanding human perception. People don't just react to what you do, they react to what they think your actions mean. That's why these public behaviors are so dangerous. Once people interpret them as weakness, it's nearly impossible to change that frame. The first layer of power is what you project. The second and far more dangerous is what people project onto you. If you seem desperate, they'll assume you're losing. If you seem emotional, they'll assume you're unstable. And even if neither is true, perception spreads faster than truth ever will. This is why Machiavelli would advise rulers to appear unshakable even in chaos. Not emotionless, just unreadable. A leader who doesn't reveal their next move forces others into constant guesswork. Guesswork breeds hesitation, and hesitation is the death of opposition. One of his lesser-known principles was the veil of scarcity. This meant keeping certain parts of yourself, your time, and your resources deliberately out of reach. Not to punish others, but to maintain value. If people have constant, easy access to you, they begin to take you for granted. But if your presence feels earned, if every word you speak feels intentional, they start to weigh your attention like currency. This principle extends beyond politics into everyday influence. In any group, the person who talks the most isn't necessarily the one with the most power. It's often the one who can make silence feel like pressure. Machiavelli mastered this in court. He'd speak sparingly, but when he did, the entire room listened. Not because he demanded it, but because he'd conditioned them to know his words carried weight. And here's the paradox: people believe what they discover more than what they're told. If you tell someone you're powerful, they'll doubt you. If you move with such control that they decide you must be powerful, they'll defend that belief on your behalf. That's why restraint is often more commanding than performance. The real battlefield isn't the meeting table, the public stage, or the crowd. It's the unspoken arena of interpretation. If you can master how others interpret you, you can lose small skirmishes without ever losing the war. But Machiavelli's philosophy wasn't about being untouchable all the time. Sometimes showing a crack, one intentional crack, can be more strategic than perfect composure. A controlled show of vulnerability offered at the exact right moment can pull people closer, disarm suspicion, and make loyalty feel personal. The key is that it's always a choice, never an accident. Control is not about hiding, it's about deciding. Deciding what they see when they see it and what story they tell themselves about you afterward. To Machiavelli, the crowd was never just a collection of people. It was a living, breathing organism with instincts, moods, and a memory. And like any organism, it reacts differently depending on how it's fed. Feed it drama and it becomes volatile. Feed it consistency and it becomes loyal. Feed it mystery and it becomes obsessed. This is why he warned against giving the public unfiltered access to your inner world. Once they feel they fully know you, they stop imagining you. And imagination is where influence truly grows. People fill in the gaps with their own desires, fears, and stories, often making you larger, more capable, and more dangerous in their minds than you might be in reality. That illusion is worth more than any direct claim of power. But illusion only works if you control your leaks. Every slip, every unguarded complaint, every visible moment of desperation becomes part of your public file. It's not just remembered, it's repeated, reshaped, and retold until it's no longer what happened, but what defines you. This is why Machiavelli's most dangerous students practiced what he called layered presence. On the surface, they appeared open, sharing enough to seem relatable, but underneath their true intentions, resources and emotions remained hidden. They mastered the art of speaking without revealing, of acting without explaining. Layered presence works because it satisfies curiosity without ending it. People feel like they've seen the real you, but in truth, they've only seen a carefully arranged reflection. The rest remains behind the curtain where it can't be used against you. This is not about lying, it's about choosing your truth. Just as an artist chooses which parts of the canvas to highlight and which to leave in shadow, you decide which parts of yourself are public and which remain private. And in that choice lies control. The public figure who thrives isn't the one who shares the most, it's the one who can vanish into stillness, then reappear with precision. Every return feels intentional. Every absence feels significant. Over time, people stop questioning if you're important and start wondering how important you really are. In politics, business, or any arena of influence, this presence becomes its own kind of armor. Attacks glance off because there's no exposed surface to strike. Gossip fades because there's too little truth to grip. And even those who dislike you keep their distance, not because of what you've done, but because of what they think you might do. Machiavelli understood when they can't predict you, they can't control you. One of Machiavelli's most enduring lessons is that unpredictability isn't chaos, it's calculated tension. People should never be able to map your every move because once they can, they'll prepare for you. And preparation is the enemy of dominance. This doesn't mean acting erratically. Randomness erodes trust. What Machiavelli taught was pattern disruption. You maintain enough consistency to be seen as stable, but at key moments you break expectation, never in ways that harm you, only in ways that keep others on their heels. A ruler might unexpectedly reward a minor ally, leaving larger allies wondering what it means for them. A leader might remain silent on a heated issue, then speak only when the moment is most impactful. The point isn't to confuse for the sake of confusion, it's to remind everyone that you decide the tempo. This principle also applies to personal interactions. If people believe they've figured you out, they'll adjust their strategies accordingly. By occasionally shifting your behavior, you prevent them from locking on to a predictable response. Sometimes you answer directly. Sometimes you deflect with humor. Sometimes you say nothing at all. Each variation adds a layer of uncertainty they must account for. But unpredictability alone isn't enough. It must be paired with what Machiavelli called the steady hand. You can be surprising without being volatile by anchoring your shifts to a clear sense of purpose. This is why those in power can issue sudden decrees, reverse decisions, or change tactics without losing authority. The underlying frame of control never changes. And then there's the element of scarcity. Machiavelli understood that overexposure breeds contempt. When you're constantly available, every interaction becomes less valuable. But when you limit access, appearing only at chosen moments, you increase the weight of your presence. People begin to read meaning into your very arrival. Scarcity also forces others to operate without constant feedback from you. It makes them guess, adapt, and sometimes overcompensate, revealing more about themselves in the process. Every gap you leave becomes an opportunity to observe how they behave when you're not there. It's in these moments of absence that you gather your real advantage. Because power isn't just about how you act when present, it's about the effect you have when you're not. If conversations shift tones, change, or plans pause, when you leave the room, you've already won a battle without lifting a finger. The most dangerous figure in Machiavelli's eyes wasn't the one who shouted commands, it was the one whose silence and absence carried the loudest message. Machiavelli knew that real influence isn't always visible. It's often embedded in the smallest, quietest exchanges. You can control the entire flow of a group without ever standing at the front, as long as you understand how perception works. One of his key tactics was frame control. Whoever defines the meaning of an event, a conversation, or a person's action controls how everyone else will interpret it. And here's the dangerous part. Once a frame is set, people rarely question it. If you lose control of the frame, even small victories can look like losses. If you hold the frame, even setbacks can look strategic. That's why the truly powerful don't rush to react in public, they take time to shape the narrative first. Sometimes that means letting others speak first so you can see where the room leans before stepping in. Sometimes it means reframing a direct attack as a sign of the attacker's insecurity. Sometimes it's as simple as choosing a single phrase that sticks in everyone's mind long after the discussion ends. But frame control is fragile. The easiest way to lose it is by over-explaining yourself. Every extra word you add gives others more material to twist. Machiavelli's approach was to speak only as much as necessary, then let silence do the rest. Silence forces interpretation, and in the absence of certainty, People often assume the interpretation that benefits the one who seems most in control. This is also why he valued symbolic actions. A small visible choice, who you sit next to, what you wear, where you stand, can carry more weight than any speech. In court, a single public gesture could shift alliances without a single word exchanged. In modern life, it works the same way. People will assign meaning to your actions, whether you explain them or not. So you might as well choose actions worth interpreting. And then there's the matter of emotional discipline. Losing your temper doesn't just reveal that someone got under your skin, it hands them the frame entirely. They're no longer the aggressor, they're the one who exposed your weakness. Machiavelli's solution: let emotion show only when it benefits you. A flash of anger, when rare and deliberate, can shock the room into silence. But if you're known for being calm, that single break in composure will be taken as a deliberate warning, not a loss of control. When you master both silence and symbolism, you stop having to fight for control. It's simply assumed you have it. And when others believe you have control, they begin to act accordingly, even when you've given them nothing concrete to work with. Machiavelli also understood that power isn't just about the moves you make, it's about the moves you deny others. Restricting someone's options forces them to play inside your design, even if they think they're acting independently. One method he used was controlled permission. Instead of outright forbidding an action, he'd allow it in a limited, specific way, enough for the person to feel free but not enough to threaten his position. In modern terms, it's like giving someone a small win so they never realize they've already lost the larger game. This works because people value what they think they've earned more than what they're given outright. If they believe they've gotten past you, they won't push harder, and by choosing what to permit, you quietly steer them toward outcomes you've already prepared for. Another tactic is strategic ambiguity. When people don't know exactly where you stand, they can't plan against you. They'll spend energy trying to decode your intentions instead of executing their own. Machiavelli used this to keep rivals unbalanced, never lying outright but never confirming more than necessary. Ambiguity is a double-edged sword, though. Used too much, it breeds mistrust. Used precisely, it keeps others cautious without making them hostile. The trick is to combine it with enough clear, decisive action that people still see you as strong and reliable, just not fully predictable. Then there's positional advantage. This is the art of being close enough to influence events but far enough to avoid blame if they fail. Machiavelli often operated through intermediaries, letting others take credit for successes and absorb backlash for failures. In today's world, that means placing yourself where you can steer decisions indirectly through advice, resource control, or subtle influence without taking on unnecessary exposure. And perhaps his most subtle move, the engineered reputation. Machiavelli knew you didn't need to win every battle if people already believed you were a dangerous opponent. Stories, even exaggerated ones, do the work for you. If people hear enough about your past victories, your composure under pressure, or your ability to turn situations in your favor, they'll often back down before conflict even begins. The reality is most power struggles end before they start, not because one side is stronger, but because the other side decides the risk isn't worth it. If you can create that calculation in people's minds, you've won without a fight. One of Machiavelli's most underappreciated insights is that perception of inevitability is as powerful as inevitability itself. If people believe your rise is unstoppable, they'll adjust to it long before it actually happens. And that adjustment, the quiet aligning of behaviors, loyalties, and opportunities in your favor, is what cements your position. To create this effect, you must combine consistency with surprise. Consistency builds trust in your capability. Surprise prevents them from predicting your exact next move. The blend makes you seem both reliable and untouchable, someone who delivers results, but never in a way that can be easily replicated. Machiavelli also practiced what could be called the art of the quiet pivot. When a path closed or a strategy failed, he didn't broadcast the setback or argue with reality. He shifted quickly without explanation into the next move. This absence of public struggle made it seem as though the change was part of the plan all along. The more seamless the transition, the more people assumed you had control, even if you were adapting on the fly. Another principle he relied on was layered alliances. The idea wasn't just to have supporters, but to have supporters who were connected to each other through you. When your network is interlinked, removing you destabilizes the entire structure, making it in everyone's interest to keep you in place. It also means that even when you're not present, your influence circulates through the relationships you've engineered. Then there's the mirror effect. By subtly reflecting people's values, priorities, or language back to them, you make them feel understood without committing yourself to their side. Machiavelli used this to gain trust in opposing factions simultaneously. It's not about lying, it's about letting each group see enough of themselves in you that they hesitate to view you as a threat. Finally, he understood the value of controlled scarcity. The less accessible you are, the more your attention becomes a reward. The key is not to disappear entirely, that breeds irrelevance, but to appear selectively in moments where your presence carries maximum weight. People should feel that when you show up, it matters. Because in the end, Machiavelli's power didn't come from being everywhere, it came from being precisely where he chose, at the exact moment it would change the game. Machiavelli's final and perhaps most dangerous principle was this: never let them see the whole board. Power is not just in the moves you make, it's in the moves you keep hidden. The moment someone believes they fully understand your strategy, they can begin to dismantle it. But if they only ever see fragments, they'll hesitate, second guess, and waste their strength chasing shadows. He did this by deliberately mixing truth with omission. Share enough accurate information to appear transparent, but leave out the key details that give the full picture. It builds a reputation for honesty while ensuring no one can fully replicate or counter your approach. Another method was preemptive framing. Before others could define him, he'd define himself, but always in a way that left room for interpretation. By planting certain ideas about who he was and how he operated, he ensured that even his enemies reinforced the image he wanted projected. He also relied heavily on asymmetric response. Not every challenge deserved an equal counterattack. Some he ignored entirely, making the aggressor look foolish for swinging at empty air. Others he struck back at swiftly and disproportionately, creating a sense of unpredictability about what might provoke him. The goal wasn't fairness, it was to keep everyone guessing which actions would trigger consequences. And above all, Machiavelli knew the value of ending on strength. No matter how a situation began, he would work to close it on terms that reinforced his authority. This might mean reshaping a conversation so his word was final, engineering a win in the smallest detail of a larger loss, or leaving an encounter with a statement so sharp it lingered long after he was gone. Because endings are what people remember. If you walk away in control, they'll rewrite the whole encounter in their minds to match that ending. In the end, all his rules come down to one thing: the art of being seen yet never fully known. The ability to exist in the public eye without ever being fully exposed. To let your presence move through a room like a shadow, felt everywhere, grasped by no one. And that is why Machiavelli's strategies still endure. They don't just teach you how to win, they teach you how to make winning look inevitable. The brilliance of Machiavelli's thinking is that it doesn't just work in the court of a Renaissance prince, it works anywhere humans gather, compete, and judge. The workplace, politics, business, even family dynamics all follow the same hidden currents of perception, fear, and influence. And those currents almost never flow to the loudest, the flashiest, or the most visibly aggressive. They flow to the one who commands the room without needing to claim it. He knew that raw strength can win battles, but it's composure, consistent, unshakable composure, that wins wars. People will forget what you said, they'll even forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel in your presence. If your presence makes them cautious, curious, and slightly uncertain, you've already shaped the outcome before the game even begins. Machiavelli's greatest lesson isn't about manipulation, it's about discipline. The discipline to withhold, to observe, to wait for the perfect moment instead of rushing for an imperfect one. The discipline to resist the very human urge to explain yourself, prove yourself, or defend yourself every time you feel challenged. And perhaps most importantly, the discipline to walk away quietly, deliberately when remaining in a situation no longer serves your long-term position. Not every fight is worth winning. Some are worth letting go entirely so your energy stays reserved for the battles that matter. In his eyes, power was less about crushing opponents than about making sure they never had a clean shot at you to begin with. That's why he built walls of perception, crafted alliances of necessity, and wielded unpredictability like a blade. Not to be feared for its violence, but for the knowledge that it could strike clean, precise, and without warning. By mastering this, you stop reacting to the world and start shaping it. People begin to move around you differently, not because you ask them to, but because your presence forces them to. They choose their words more carefully. They think twice before testing you. They adjust without even realizing they're adjusting to the rhythm you've set. And when you reach that point, you've stepped beyond mere survival or success. You've entered the realm Machiavelli reserved for the truly powerful, where winning is not an event, but a constant state of being, where you are no longer playing the game, because you are the game.